Good morning and good afternoon for those that are in another time zone. My name is Ngabo Nankonde, and I am in strategic communication, and I'm hosting or moderating this webinar on behalf of JENA. Before I say much, I wish to call upon Father Chilofya, Charles Chilofya, who is head of JENA, to give us a prayer, please.
Let us just recollect ourselves and recognize that we are in the presence of God. Is it? Yeah, but it's playing. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right.
Amen.
No.
Thank you very much, Father Charlie Chilufian. And welcome again for those of you who've just joined us. Before I go into the topic of this webinar, I wish to introduce to you the host organization, which is the Jesuit Justice and Ecology Network, Africa, JENA. JENA is a diverse community of faith-inspired Jesuit non-government organizations, also known as social centers, related Jesuit institutions, individual Jesuits. We also have Jesuit collaborators, as well as peace and development activists and scholars who are driven by the vision of a just, poverty-free, peaceful, and ecologically regenerative Africa. JENA operates under the Justice and Ecology Office, GEO, of the Justice Conference of Africa and Madagascar. JCAM is a coordinating unit of common justice works and ministries in Africa. Its secretariat is in Nairobi, Kenya, and that is where JENA is hosted. Working collaboratively with communities whose voices and lifeways have been marginalized and who may experience an intersection of multiple forms of injustice. JENA member organizations and individuals are dedicated to fighting poverty and related injustices around Africa. They work towards empowering marginalized voices, communities and groups, and they also facilitate policy innovation. Member organizations of the network work together internationally to achieve a greater impact through collective efforts in all JENA actions. The ultimate goal is, of course, to enable people unlock their potential, as well as exercise their rights and manage their own lives. Now, coming to the topic of the day. JENA webinar today is on food insecurity, climate change, and COVID-19, the African Jesuit response. Food security, as we know, in sub-Saharan Africa is under threat. The ability of many Africans to access sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs has been disrupted by successive natural disasters and epidemics. Cyclones, locust outbreaks in Eastern Africa, and droughts in Southern and Eastern Africa are some of the examples. The latest pandemic that we are experiencing in Africa, in this particular part of Africa, COVID-19, is just the latest such catastrophe to have swollen the ranks of 240 million people going hungry in the region. In some countries, over 70% of the population has problems accessing food. I'm sure most of us are aware that in some countries there's been the lockdown, and therefore people have not been able to have access to food or the usual sources of income. The sub-Saharan Africa is the world's most food insecure region. Climate change has of course caused an increase in that insecurity, and the sub-Saharan African region is particularly vulnerable to the forces of climate change, as we've already referred to. And of course, we have shortages of food and high prices for the food that is available. Lives lost, increased vulnerability. Africans are easily pushed into food insecurity because of their inability to adapt, and it's limited by many factors, including low savings and access to finance and insurance. As a result, lives are lost, malnutrition rises, health worsens, and school enrollment drops. All this ultimately damages the economy's productive capacity. With the COVID-19, most of our schools are closed, and those that can afford the gadgets, the ICT gadgets, are able to at least have e-learning. But for those in rural parts of the region, it means the children are not able to have any form of education during this past. In fact, it's been 3 months for some countries, 2 months for others. So we're seeing all these challenges being played out. The measures contain and measures to contain and manage COVID-19 pandemic, while critical to saving lives, risks getting the food insecurity even worse, situation even worse. The borders, of course, have closed in most cases, and some countries are landlocked, as most of us are already aware. And also we have curfews intended to slow the spread of the disease. And these are disrupting supply chains that even under normal circumstances struggle to stock markets and supply farmers with seeds and other inputs. Designing COVID-19 era measures to improve food security. At this critical juncture, the region needs to prioritize policies targeted at reducing risks to food security as part of fiscal stimulus packages to counter the pandemic. These policies should focus on increasing agricultural output and strengthening households' ability to withstand shocks. This would have the added benefit of reducing inequalities while boosting economic growth with jobs. Gender's added value. Gender proposals for Francis's Ecological Laudato as helpful framework for understanding and acting on issues of climate justice and food security. Gender uses the resources of faith, spirituality in responding to the challenge of environmental segregation with a lot of focus on compassion for the poor and the vulnerable, and of course the needs for the certain personal and corporate conversion for all of us in order for us to speak with one voice. Now, I'll come now to the interveners to help us articulate the topic of the day, that is the African Jesuit response to climate change and see COVID-19. Let us welcome the three panelists. We have, first of all, Dr. Emmanuel Nyanzi. He's a doctoral researcher at Wageningen University in Netherlands, and his current research focuses on climate, environment, and agriculture sciences. He is an applied climatologist with extraordinary interdisciplinary research skills in combining both qualitative and quantitative research methods in understanding the complexities of climate and environmental change and its impact on natural and human systems. Dr. Emmanuel also strives to go beyond the theories and develop innovative solutions to survive these impacts. He is the newest individual affiliate member of JENA. As I had indicated earlier, JENA has individual members as well in its network. We also have Dr. Ghislaine Matadi Tshikendwa. He's a Jesuit, and he is the current director of the Center of Research and Sustainable Development in Kinshasa, DRC, Congo. He is focused on development sociology, and he is currently researching and working with communities in Mongata, Kinshasa, focusing on helping communities build resilience to climate change impacts with a lot of focus on sustainable food production. Our last panelist is Father JCED, who is also a Jesuit and is a Zambian Jesuit who is the director at the Jesuit Center for Ecology and Development, which is based in Lilongwe in Malawi. He works with local communities in Kasungu to promote environmental integrity and to ensure that the vulnerable households have decent livelihoods. Informed by the service of faith and justice and a strong commitment to the well-being of the local communities in Malawi, the mission of JCED is to promote sustainable livelihoods, food security, and nutrition. Water as well as sanitation is also a major area of focus, and the use of efficient and renewable energy sources, as well as proper management of natural resources. Father Makasa has a master's from the University of Edinburgh, and the focus of his master's program was on ecological economics. So with that very long narrative, I wish to welcome you all who have who've gone online to listen to this webinar, and I wish now to call upon Dr. Emmanuel Nyadzi to speak to us before the other interventions can come in. Please be aware that you are free to send any questions, and they will be addressed as we go on during this discussion. Please go ahead, Dr. Emmanuel.
Right. Thank you very much, Madam. Can you see my screen now? Thank you. Hello?
Yes, we can. Well,
I can see my
screen. Yes,
oh,
you can see
good.
the screen.
All right, so good day to everybody. And I think
We're losing, I think we're losing him.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. So I'm saying that it's a great time to talk about climate change and especially how it's affecting food security and climate in Africa, and how when what is likely to happen during the post-COVID-19 era. So I'm working in water system and global change, and it's a nice time to join all of you here. So my presentation is going to take this outline. I'm going to talk a brief about the interaction between economy of Africa and also climate change, and how food security is being affected. What is real issue about the climate change in Africa? I'm going to touch upon that and look at some impact that the climate is actually having, the changing climate is having on the food security of our continent. And how do we respond to this? By providing practical examples and also reflecting forward how the food security situation in the post-COVID-19 era is likely to worsen, or perhaps how can we try to adjust our system in order to not to suffer a bit more worse food insecurity in the continent. So there is an improved economic growth across many countries in the continent of Africa, and especially they had a high spike from 2016 onwards, despite a lot of economic indicators showing that Africa is quite doing well. Yet the most vulnerable or the most extremely poor people are also living in the continent of Africa. And this has been mentioned by the FAO in its recent report that hunger is on the rise in almost all sub-Saharan Africa regions in Africa. And this on gender phase is actually seen that most women are slightly highly impacted than that of men. It is interesting to know that analysis of moderately or severe food insecurity that was performed on the continent, almost about 52% of the total 1.3 billion people, 1.3 million people on the continent are actually suffering from moderate to severe food security. And about 22% of this number, which is about 277 million people, are also suffering from severe food insecurity challenges. Despite these problems, climate change is expected to aggravate the situation on the African continent. So having given this background, I would like to say that climate change has a lot of evidence that is being pointing to the fact that the change is going to continue, even if greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are actually stabilized. However, whilst this change reflects across the globe, in Africa, heat waves have been projected to actually increase. And these heat waves will reflect in warmer days increasing and then cold days reducing. And not only that, the frequency of these heat waves are going to be high, and also how long this particular heat waves is going to also occur, is going to increase. There's also going to be drought, and this is manifesting already in many aspects of the continent, especially the southern part of Africa. And drought is also expected to intensify due to reduced precipitation and evapotranspiration. And the more realistic one is also about the extreme rainfall that is also expected to be high in areas across West Africa. It's expected there will be low to medium rainfall increasing, where countries like Sudan is also expected to be very high, intense, extreme rainfall as occurring in those areas. Now, there is also an issue of storms with high winds, and these storms are likely to break houses, and not only houses, farms, produce are likely to be destroyed also in the continent. And it's important to know that while these
Dr. Nyati, we've lost your voice.
And more particularly, though, can you hear me?
Could you repeat the last? Yeah, could you repeat the last two sentences for the benefit of the others?
So,
yes.
so with this impact of heat waves and drought and extreme rainfall, it is important to know that these impacts are not going to be geographically uniform. There are certain regions that will receive more extreme cases of these impacts, and whilst others will receive less. For example, extreme rainfall in West Africa will be a bit low to medium in intensity, but when it comes to Sudan and some other countries, it's going to be very severe. Now, the question also is, what about the cyclones that are occurring, the cyclone Idai and then the cyclone Kenneth that occurred, for example, in most part of Southeastern Africa. These and in countries like Mozambique, which was highly hit, and not only that, in Zimbabwe and Malawi. The question that comes to mind is there these things, can we attribute climate change to them? Now, while it is very difficult to be able to pinpoint the effect directly of climate change to the cyclone occurrence, there is also a little bit of clue as to why this can give us an idea of what climate change is likely to happen. It's expected that the impact of climate change is to accelerate the severeness of these particular cyclones. So in normal circumstances, with a changing climate, we expect high temperatures, and cyclones are developed with high sea surface temperatures. So when the sea surface increases in temperature, there's of course warm air goes up, and as warm air goes up, they cool. And as low air, air blowing from low latitude areas also come toward the sea surface. So whilst these particular events are occurring, you realize that this moisture builds up. Into a more like a cycle form. And then later on, when it matures, and then it falls back. So you realize the sea surface temperature increase as a result of global temperature increasing can accelerate the severeness of the cyclones on the continent. And not only that, it is also expected that in these areas, they are lowland areas. And while these areas are lowland, then sea level rise is already an increase. When cyclones occur, there's a high probability that the flood waters will increase in those areas. So there is a clue as to how these cyclones can be related to climate change. It is important that whilst we look at this climate change impact on the continent, now let's see how they are likely to affect the food security system of Africa. Now, I would like to discuss the impact of the climate change in food security in Africa by looking at these three dimensions or components of food security. That for Africa to be food secure, we need to produce, food need to be available, and it needs to be accessed by all, and at the same time utilized for the benefit of all. Agriculture is the most important for food security because it provides foods for people. At the same time, also, it also generates livelihood for many people. But this agriculture is highly impacted by climate change. It is estimated that climate-related causes from 2003, 2013. It's almost about 1.4 million US dollars. And this in sub-Saharan Africa. And this was because of flood, drought, and also storms. Now, typically, we can realize that the fluctuation of food prices or food availability in the region is attributed to drought and also floods. And so in extreme events where we have these cases repeating itself, then the food availability are going to be fluctuating. So in the region, you typically see a farmer expecting rains, and then he plants his seeds and the rain doesn't come. And so he loses all his crops, and that season he gets low yield. And some occasions also you see that a farmer plants his seeds and expect that there'll be normal rainfall, but then the rain comes and then there'll be a bath and then the whole field floods. Even irrigation system that is expected to support or provide supplementary irrigation are also affected. You see, irrigation managers are challenged as to how much water is going to be in their reservoir so they can pump it into their field for preparation. So looking at this fluctuation looking at these changes in drought and also floods and the possibility that is going to be increased in the future, it may result in fluctuation in food security. Now, so I mentioned that with food availability, how is climate change affecting food availability? Of course, because of increasing drought and floods, there's a possibility that food crops and livestock are likely to be reduced. And if the production of food crops and livestock are reduced, we expect that the availability of them will also be less. There will also be local losses that could have temporary effects on local markets. Once there is loss in this food and animal production, local markets are likely to be affected in terms of availability of such commodities. It will also affect the price of these commodities and higher costs for storing grains and perishable products because of floods and the related climate issue. And if you don't have a lot that food, then indeed you will not have enough to even export or even thinking about importing from other regions that are also being affected. So it's clear that food availability is going to be affected by climate change. Allocation of their food. Now, the loss of farm income and non-employment is expected that because of food unavailability, less yield will result in less amount of income for the farmers. And most of them would have to change from their field even to non-farm farm ventures so that they can raise extra income, and which are also likely to be impacted by climate. Now, prices of and affordability of commodity will also become very uncertain because of fluctuating prices and at the same time changing or variability in the climate. Preferences for food. So if you're somebody who prefer a certain kind of food, there's a possibility that your preference for you to have such preference in the future is even shaken because you are not sure of how available or how much it will cost in the future. Local increase in food prices, of course, and also food will not be available and to be too costly. For pricing of water may also cause food prices to rise. So in this way, food accessibility becomes a challenge just because of climate change. Now, the interesting part is what about the nutritional value and then the social value and even the food safety conditions because of food utilization. Because the risk of dehydration as a result of high evaporation and also increased temperature is likely to cause a lot of ill health. And people are also going to eat food types that are already in a very bad state, and that can cause them diseases and certain illness. Ability of the body to even process this food will be hindered because of heat stress and diseases. Even dietary adjustments with low nutritional content is going to happen because if you get a certain, if you usually eat a certain type of food that gives you a particular amount of nutrients, because of future climate, you're likely to change those kind of food and have supplementary or substitute it with some other kind of food stuff, which may not necessarily provide you with the right amount of food. Now, so looking at this area, climate change is happening. and it's going to affect the African food security system in a way that food availability will be a problem, food accessibility will be a problem, and even utilizing the food will also be a problem. What can we do? There are a lot of suggestions out there, but practically, policies and regulations are one of the issues we need to focus on. Now, policies in improving the national meteorological agencies, and so that they can generate accurate and reliable climate information so that farmers can use for their informed decision. There is also need for us to generate weather-related insurance. Companies, financial companies generate this insurance scheme so that when farmers run at a loss because of failing crops and changing climate, they will be need for support for those who may be hit hard by extreme events like storms or the cyclones that really occur. Infrastructure-wise, there's need to invest in irrigation because most of African agriculture is rain-fed. And as far as we continue to rely on rain-fed agriculture, the food yield will be low. So it's important we invest in reservoirs and dams. Like Ghana, for example, there has been a call for one village, one dam food production. And it's a good idea, but there is need for political will, at the same time social will, to champion some of these policies. New investment in flood embankment. Those communities that are along the coastal areas, the need for sea defense walls, because changing climate will rise the sea level. And when in case of cyclones, there's going to be a lot of water into the fields, into the communities, and devastating a lot of lives and livelihood. Now we need also to build wind-resistant technologies, establish emergency shelter on high grounds for people who are in risk zone areas. When it comes to farming and forestry and fishing practices, it is important to look at how we are going to change our cropping patterns. Others are suggesting agroecology, agroecological farming, where you plant trees in order to safeguard climate. At the same time, you try to improve your yield as well. Climate smart agriculture is one of those approaches. We need to get new varieties of crops that can withstand heat and also withstand floods. Moisture retaining land management practices like mulching to be able to safeguard the amount of water in the soil so that evaporation will not have to affect crops. It's also important that whilst water is becoming a deficit, there is need that we recycle our wastewater for irrigation purposes. And then our water management regimes will also reduce. We need to look for a more precise way of irrigating our crops instead of just doing a wide sprinkling or perhaps more gravity that has a lot of waste of water. We can look at drip irrigation system, and all these things call for investment into infrastructure. For our food processing and distribution and marketing aspect, it's important that alternative source of energy for electricity is actually being brought to the bear. And when you come to most parts of Africa, there's been a call for solar energy across the continent, which is going to present a lot of opportunities also for vulnerable people and low income earners, at the same time poor people in terms of employment. And also there's need for us to recycle wastewater, as I've mentioned already. More particularly, we also need to have food processing technologies that actually don't consume a lot of energy, but offers an effective way of drying foods and packaging foods. Our homes need to seek alternative fuel sources instead of cutting trees and using firewoods and all that. We need to look at sensible ways of actually generating fuels. There's need for cooking cooking methods have to be changed so that we use cooking methods that are more efficient and also reliable. So these are what we can do. We need policy restructure. We need infrastructure reinvestment in terms of irrigation facilities. We need to restructure our practices in agriculture, forestry, and everything. Food processing need to change, and even food preparation practices need to change. So this is how climate change is happening and how it's going to affect our food security system. But the question is, with the COVID-19 happen, what do you think is likely to happen? Now, having reflected on this, I realized that It will depend on whether the COVID-19 will result in structural changes that will affect societal transformation, or perhaps just a marginal Europe. Now, with COVID-19, it's expected that access to a key input that farmers need on the continent to produce food and even finance is likely going to be skyrocketed, because there will be higher demand and people are going to be looking for such commodities. Now, countries and companies may also change their marketing strategies. Earlier on, because of international trade, countries focus on their comparative advantage. But because of COVID-19, there's a possibility that most countries are going to diversify their food production system. And with this diversification, what they're likely to do is that they are no longer going to be depending so much on other countries for some kind of food, but rather try to produce it themselves. How will this affect? And this is likely to affect international trade and even the local farmer who over the years in Cote d'Ivoire, for example, who happen to produce cocoa. What if other countries choose that, okay, we are likely because of COVID-19 and possible occurrence of such pandemic, let's also push our energy also in producing a bit of that. What about food crops like maize or rice that we import a lot into Africa? What if other countries decide that they want to now safeguard their rice also? What happened? So we also have to start thinking about not only comparative advantage, but diversifying our system and producing food that can help us as well. There is also going to be change in consumption patterns. Of course, in Europe, for example, you can see clearly, and there is going to be possible if the situation gets worse in Africa. Most people are now looking for healthy vegetables and fresh fruits to eat instead of animal products. Prices of rice, coffee, and all those things are already dropping, and because people are looking for more healthy ways of living. And this may increase food prices and inequality for people to access food. So if there is high price in vegetables and fruits, how can the ordinary farmer who cannot have a lot of money afford to purchase this? Or local people who are poor afford to purchase this? Competition between emergency medical supply and then food supply chain. Are governments going to change their ideas of focusing on providing healthcare systems that are effective and to the negligence of the food production system instead of improving the resilience of food? So these are policy challenges that are likely to happen. Governments have to think along ways of keeping a balance so that the food production system is also not affected. I would like to say that climate change would directly and indirectly affect Africans' food security goals, and so will COVID-19 do. Most parts of the world the effect is going to happen, but it's not going to be direct on others. Some will be indirect. But no matter which way, it is important for us to recognize that with climate change happening, competing resources, this is going to affect all of us. Now, climate change is not all doomed. It's not all about doom and gloom stories. It also presents opportunities for green energy, create jobs, all right? So, and also vulnerable farmers who are who are affected or hard hit by this climate change, and possibly by extension COVID-19, and their households are likely to suffer from this. And so there is need for us to build their resilience. One important thing to note is that farmers and local people know their terrain more than any other person. And so their knowledge matters in all these. So whilst we seek to improve our food security system, it's important that we go down there and together we can develop a more efficient and effective approaches to boosting our food production system. There is so much talk. It is time for us to have a coordinated action and effort by government, civil society, and faith communities like Gina is already executing a lot of projects on the ground, which I'm sure they will mention it afterwards. Scientists like myself and others in the universities need to come together to improve how we will be able to harness the changing climate indigenous knowledge to addition with their scientific knowledge, so that in a more objective manner to be able to improve the forecast for them so they can make informed decisions. Climate smart agriculture also presents us a lot of opportunities. And policy pathway for post-COVID-19 food systems need to be on the agenda of most African countries. we often have to wait until the thing hits us hard. We should also bear in mind that whilst we are not having direct impact in our lives in Africa, occurrence of this COVID-19 in Europe can also have a replicating effect on us. And that is something we have to also plan towards. So I would like to say that climate change is happening, it's affecting the food security system in Africa, and it's likely to continue, but we need to offer our services to most heated, which are the vulnerable in our community, especially during the post-COVID-19 era. Thank you very much for your time. And I hope if there's any question or something, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyadzi. That was a very elaborate presentation. And thank you for leaving us with a picture of the most vulnerable through this whole pandemic and food security situation. They are very happy, though. They're really happy people, saying thank you on your behalf. Before we go any further, I wish to acknowledge the presence of the United Nations Environmental Programme Strategic Engagement with Faith Organizations Director, who is based in Nairobi, and his name is Dr. Iyad. Welcome, sir. Would you like to say something to us? Dr. Iyad, if you can hear me, would you like to say something? Okay, we'll call him. We'll call on him later on in the discussion. Before I call on the next panelist, I wish to just also just say something so that you may take note and address it later on. We're experiencing the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, and for you environmentalists, I hope you have also looked at the issue of e-waste. What has happened is that we have a huge percentage of people using ICT platforms because of the work from home policy that most countries have actually directed. So we need to know what the environmentalists are thinking of in terms of policy direction with regard to e-waste, because this is a topic that in Africa has not been talked about much. I know in Zambia, the talk has started. I know Malawi is doing something, Namibia is also doing something, but I think this is something that we should start thinking about post-COVID. Since you've given us a challenge to say, what are we going to do? We have to start thinking of policies post-COVID. And coming back to the discussion, I wish to call upon Dr. Tshikendwa from Congo DRC, who can speak to us, speaking to the presentation, and probably give us also some insight on the issues that are on the ground in Kinshasa, where he focuses on helping communities build resilience to climate change impacts. And also he does also look at sustainable food production. Father Tshikendwa, please. Maybe I can call on Father Adrian to speak into the presentation as we're waiting for Father Tshikendwa. Father Adrian, are you ready?
Good morning, everyone. And are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, very good. Okay, first of all, I wish you all a very happy World Environment Day. And I'm so happy to have this opportunity to give a presentation of food insecurity, climate change, and COVID.
the Malawian perspective. Most of what I would present here is what Dr. Emmanuel has been talking about at a more generic level, but I'll be more hands-on and more practical. I'm going to present basically a climate resilient project that JCED is implementing in Kasungu in Malawi. So just a bit about Malawi. For some of you who may be ignorant about this beautiful country, I'll take the opportunity to enlighten you about the least known country probably in Southern Africa. So that's the small country in red there, almost completely engulfed by Mozambique, and it also shares borders with Zambia and Tanzania. On the side of the map there, we have some beautiful pictures of some beautiful sceneries in Malawi. And a bit about the profile. It has a total population of about 18 million people. And the population, it is important to note that the population trebled in the past 40 years. One of the significant geographical features of the country is Lake Malawi, which constitutes about 1/5 of the entire country. So the eastern fringes of Malawi are mainly characterized by Lake Malawi, which runs all the way from the northern part to the southern part of the country. It's a very beautiful lake, and it is said that it has the highest diversity of fish species in Africa, if not in the world. And so next time you're in Malawi, please don't forget to visit Lake Malawi. The proportion of total population that are dependent on agriculture for livelihood, it's 85%. So it's pretty much an agricultural country. The main cash crop being tobacco, which is mainly exported to Europe. There's a bit of tea that is grown in the northern part of the country, and also in the mountains in the south, the areas of Tyolo and Mulanje. The proportion living below poverty datum line is over 9 million. So more than 50% of the population of Malawi live below the poverty datum line. Well, getting back to the main topic of the day, food security, I've decided to call it food insecurity. I will talk about first the main drivers of food insecurity in Malawi. As Dr. Emmanuel mentioned, the top on the list is climate change. And here in Malawi, we are experiencing climate change in terms of extreme weather experiences like floods and droughts. We heard Emmanuel mention the Idai cyclone that hit the southern part of the country in 2018. And it's suffice to say that, as a matter of fact, the southern region of the country suffers floods almost every rain season. And the paradox is that within the same land, the central part of the country and the northern part of the country usually experiences a lot of drought. So it's really a land of extremes. on the picture there. I love that picture because I took it myself, the picture on the left. That is one of the victims of the Idai cyclone. As you can see, our house was destroyed by the cyclone. Thanks be to the fundraising efforts of the Zambia-Malawi Jesuit province, a lot of support went to this little village called Konza Alendo, and there's been a lot of rebuilding of houses in that particular village with the generous support of the Zambia-Malawi province and many other Jesuits and collaborators. The other drivers of food insecurity in Malawi are obviously its ecological degradation, which presents itself in those four main forms. We have deforestation and forest degradation. The statistics in terms of forest degradation stand at 3% every year. So Malawi loses its forests at the rate of 3% every year. And it is projected that if we continue on that trajectory, everything remaining constant, by 2079, Malawi will have no trees at all. It will be a desert. Thanks be to some of the policies of the government. There are many players in this sector, including JCED, that are committed to afforestation programs. I'll talk about that later. And we have soil degradation as one of the drivers of food insecurity. Most of the soils in Malawi are overused through agriculture, and some of those agricultural methods have not been very sensitive to soil health. And it is said, again, for those who love statistics, it is said that Malawi loses 29 tons of the rich topsoil from every hectare every year. So 29 tons from per hectare per year every year. So that's a lot of soil, rich soil, agricultural soil that just goes mainly through runoff water, and it goes into the water bodies of the country. There's water resource degradation and, of course, biodiversity loss. So maybe the question we should be asking at this point in time is, what is JCED doing to address some of these drivers of food insecurity in Malawi? We have a very interesting project which is called Tasinta. Tasinta is a Chewa word for transformation. We have changed. Basically, this project has a goal to move the small-scale farmers and their families in the traditional authority Kaumba Kasungu district to a productive and resilient society in the face of climate change. So basically, we are trying to respond to some of the impacts of climate change in order to make the farming, small-scale farming communities in Kasungu, to make them more resilient to some of these impacts of climate change. Just a recap on some of the fundamental characteristics of climate change that we pay attention to in the design of this project. It is important to note that climate change impacts are highly diverse and context specific. So the design, the planning of this project, is locally driven. and it pays attention to various sectors, and also paying attention to resources of non-local knowledge and resources. So it is important to note that climate impacts are highly diverse and context specific. So planning needs to be locally driven and across sectors, but also include non-local knowledge and resources. Secondly, climate change impacts represent long-term and permanent changes. So in situations, must adapt with an eye towards the same time scale. So just we have to bear in mind that climate change impacts are long-term and permanent, and our response is not supposed to be reactionary. It is supposed to pay attention to that time scale. And thirdly, climate change impacts are difficult to predict in nature. They're very highly unpredictable, and a framework must be developed with appropriate flexibility to evolve. So the unpredictable nature of climate change impacts call for responses that are sort of flexible. And so I will talk about one of the modules that we are giving to our farmers, which is called scenario planning. In this scenario, in this case of a drought, how would a farmer respond? If there's a flood, how would a farmer respond? So we sort of teach our farmers to look ahead, to be more proactive. When adapting to climate change impacts, focus needs to be on drivers of vulnerability. So we need to pay attention to what is it that drives climate change. We need to pay attention to climate change impacts. And those are some of the impacts that this project is responding to. So some of the major intervention areas: one, we have knowledge and skills enhancement. And secondly, we do climate smart farming practices. Thirdly, farmer managed natural regeneration and agroforestry, and then fruit tree cultivation. Then fourth, we promote clean and energy efficient cook stoves. And fifth, we are trying to our best to get into value addition of oil seed farm produce, enhance off-farm enterprises and access to financial services. And lastly, we pay attention to education, public awareness, communication, and policy orientation. Now, in detail, in terms of knowledge and skills enhancement, what is it that we are doing exactly? That we've divided knowledge and skills enhancement at two levels. There is what we call soft knowledge and skills. In this segment, we have 3 modules that we train not only our farmers, but also the trainers, those who go where we try to help our beneficiaries to properly understand how climate change affects them, what kind of impacts are they experiencing. Then we have ecosystem services approaches, and then we have scenario planning, and we are also teaching entrepreneurship and business management. At the second level, in knowledge and skills enhancement, we have technical knowledge and skills. Basically here, we try to teach our farmers climate resilient farming practices, conservation agriculture, if you like, and the making of cook stoves, both ceramic stoves and what we call microgasifier stoves. This project of the microgasifiers is just about to kickstart. We've been laying the foundation, procurement of machinery, and anytime this month we should get into production. That's just a picture depicting, a training on scenario planning organized by JCED, and the training was being offered to the JCED staff, but also other stakeholders, government field officers. So that was a scenario planning training. Then other strategic activities that we have, as I said, at Climate Smart Farming 2, we have Climate Smart Farming Practices. Dr. Emmanuel talked about this. We are doing training for manure making to our farmers in order to make them understand that they have to pay attention to the soil health. We teach our farmers practices of mulching in order to reduce the loss of moisture, the loss of water from the soils, and then increased access to certified seed for soil seed crop production. So what we are trying to do in the third year of the project, we are going to start producing improved seed varieties, because part of the problem of reduced produce or output of farmers is the fact that they use the same seeds year in and year out. The seeds are so poor. So we've put in a deliberate intervention to produce improved seeds that we are going to make available to farmers at a very subsidized rate. Okay, that's just a picture showing a training on manure making being given to our farmers by our field officers and government extension officers. Okay, the third strategic activity, there's the farmer managed natural regeneration. Here, most people understand afforestation basically as the planting of new trees, but there is a more efficient way of doing afforestation. This is a type of approach to afforestation that pays attention to natural, regenerates the natural shrubs within an ecosystem, and you try to manage those natural regenerates. It's a very efficient method of afforestation in the sense that the shrubs that you have in a particular landscape are already adapted to that environment. And so the survival rate is very high. All you need to do is to manage those natural shrubs. But of course, we also do the conventional afforestation method where we develop tree seedlings and distribute them to the farmers, and then we make follow-ups to make sure that they know how to manage those planted tree seedlings. And we are mainly focusing on agroforestry trees. These are trees that add nutrients to the soil. So those are the ones that we are promoting among our beneficiaries.
CEREDMakasa, sorry to interrupt. You have about 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. Let me.
We're running out of time.
Okay, so that's just a picture of a farm where a farmer practices farmer managed natural regeneration. Okay, so we are promoting clean and energy efficient cook stoves. As I said, initially we were promoting what is called Chitetezo Mbaula, that is the stove there. It's a stove, it's a ceramic stove that our beneficiaries make. Its efficiency is, as a result, as you can see, it has a very little chamber there where you can put 3 pieces of firewood. and it will cook even more efficiently than the traditional 3-stone fire, and there's reduced emission. As I mentioned, we are now trying to begin to promote this micro-gasifier stove, which uses briquettes that will be made out of farm waste like cotton residues and also tobacco residues. These are the briquettes that it uses. And it comes with bulbs that can light at least 3 rooms of any homestead. The energy that powers those bulbs is converted from excess heat from the cooking and then stored in a battery that is installed in the stove, and you are able to light those bulbs. Okay, so maybe in the interest of time, I will stop there. Those are some of the few strategic activities that we are promoting among our farmers. Maybe lastly, just let me speak to this last slide, just to mention that, as Dr. Emmanuel mentioned, we foresee a situation where our farmers may not be able to use their land anymore for agriculture. So we are also paying attention to off-farm enterprises or businesses, small businesses that our farmers are doing, and then we give them soft loans to boost up those small businesses that they are doing that may have nothing to do with agriculture. Bicycles here in Malawi are used as taxis. So some people get those soft loans in order to increase their fleet of bicycles. Some get them to buy motorbikes that they use as taxis, and several other small businesses. So this is a way also of increasing the resilience of our beneficiaries. Thank you very much, and I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Father Makasa, and interesting to see what you're doing with Jacinta. And I can only imagine that it must be quite challenging, especially that Malawi, like Zambia, does suffer a lot from load shedding. So it means people are drawn to go and use alternative sources of energy. I hope that Dr. Tshikendwa is ready for us now.
I think that you can hear me now. You can hear me now?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, but I don't have a video. It doesn't matter. So thank you very much. I'm hearing you very, very, very well from the beginning. I would like to share with you my experience from Mongata, from DRC Congo. First of all, recognize that COVID-19 is not the first health crisis that Africa has experienced. And I don't think that this pandemic will be the last. To tell the truth, Africa is often described in terms of crisis, be it food, health, or political. But the advantage of the current crisis is to show us directly the suffering of many people at the same time. Even the suffering of those who often help us, countries that are often presented to us as paradise in earth, countries that many Africans would like to visit, taking so many risks. For me, I think that COVID-19 is not the last, but it helps us understand actions that we have taken in favor of food security, environment issues, and many other issues, sanitarian and so on. What is the CERED action? First of all, I would like to present a little bit the CERED. The Center for Research and Communication in Sustainable Development, whose headquarters has just been transferred to the rural environment, was born from a reflection carried out on the strategies to be implemented to face major and complex crises like the COVID-19. We were alerted in January 2015 after the clashes in the city of Kinshasa and a few other cities in the country on January 19, 20, and 21st. These clashes have shown us that nothing is planned, at least on the food front, to govern in the event of a lasting crisis. And the idea of creating an agriculture center was born. And we chose Mongata because Mongata is 165 kilometers from Kinshasa for agricultural production and the purchase of agricultural products from the peasant, from the farmers with whom we work. We have created...
Apologies, Father. I just wish to take this opportunity to ask Father Makasa to remove the slides on the screen at present as you present.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
You may proceed, sir.
Okay, yes. So the idea of creating a center in Mongata was born from the crisis reflection in Kinshasa. At the time, we realized that the country doesn't have a strategy, a structure, which can help when crises, big crises occur in Kinshasa, where, as you can imagine, we have at least 12 million people living in Kinshasa. And we thought about how we can help people when they leave a crisis, a food crisis like the one which is going on now. And this is why we decided to create CERED, and especially to put CERED in a rural area where we have possibilities of land, where we have possibilities of space, where peasants are so they need to produce and to sell their products. And we set up the center here, helped to the Jesuits from Austria and Germany. So that's what is the entrepreneurial vision of CERED. CERED is, I can say, the son of another project we called PMRK, which is the Makala Renewal Project in Kinshasa. As you know, the issue of forest in the Congo is a serious issue. And many forests are destroyed. To avoid peasants destroying their forest, we decided to plant trees. And we have chosen acacia. Acacia because it's trees that can grow quickly. And we began this in 2013. And we have 100 hectares today of trees. And the issue was, when the trees grow, we can cut them and make the energy to cook for people. Instead of going and destroying the forest, we would cut the trees we have planted and sell the makala, I don't know in English, how do you call them, to sell them in Kinshasa. And
Charcoal.
Yeah, charcoal, yes, yes. And, you know, I'm saying that because it become real and it become something which we didn't really know how it can help. And today, thanks to COVID-19, it shows that we can help for that. Planting acacia, we don't plant them alone. We do acacia in association with cassava, with beans, and with other agricultural products. And we have done that. And today we have trees. After 7 years, we have trees when we can cut cattle and sell them. And when I'm talking to you now, people are doing that because charcoal is becoming really petrol in Kinshasa. It's becoming very, 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 very share. Yeah. So now we are cutting that we can help people to sell them with price which is affordable. So and yes, then From that project, PMRK, Makala Renouvelable de Kinshasa, we have started CERED with other objectives. The first objective was the entrepreneurship of young people. How young people can find here a place where they can be trained to create their own business in agriculture. And that's what we have done. And at the same time, how this place can become a place where peasants are trained to new strategy of producing agriculture and all the things which are related to agriculture. That's what we have been doing so far. And what was the first experience? When I was dean in ISAV, ISAV is a higher, let's say, education in Kinshasa, Institut Supérieur Agro-Vétérinaire, an institute which deals with agriculture. When I was dean, I met a young girl, Esther Kutoluka. I will send you the text I wrote for that. I met her. She was doing mushroom. And I thought that, you know, many times in our schools, in our university, we are learning theories, but she was doing something concrete. And the CERED said, thanks to the help of NGO, I asked her to continue to study master in making mushroom and trying to study what an entrepreneur can be in doing mushroom. So producing mushroom, being able to sell, and so far. And Esther joined after by Kutoluka. They did an enterprise which is working today. And I will call them to set up another mushroom production here from Mongata. So that was the idea. The idea was, if we need really to make the difference in agriculture, we need to train young people, to train them from the university, to train them from where they are studying, to help them make a small business in making, in giving them, for example, land, because we have plenty of land here. They can work and they can be trained really to be entrepreneur. So that was the evolution of CERED. And now, what can we say thanks to COVID-19? I'm trying to make link between rural area and urban area. Because of the COVID-19, people think that the good food they have to eat is what is produced here in the rural area, the local food. Now people, they love local food, but this local food is not there. We have really to go to the villages and then to find the local food. So each weekend, I go to Kinshasa with what I've produced here and I have purchased here to sell in Kinshasa. And I have received so far many people who ask me to bring fish, to bring pork, to bring chicken, and so on, but produced in the villages. And they are in the village. At the same time, we are trying to produce by ourselves. I have here many young people who came here just to work in order to react against the crisis. I think that the crisis is not already there. It will come. There will come the alimentary crisis and the sanitarian crisis. This is coming. So we have fought on that many years ago, and today it's becoming really real. What I like to say to Africans, guys, we need to anticipate. People who are thinking on actions today, they are late. And what lack in Africans people we don't think ahead of time. ahead of time. You cannot produce today a pork. Just today, you cannot produce, because there are many cultures, they last at least 3 months, like maize. They will last 3 months. Cassava will last 1 year. So that we need to do that before. We need to react before. That's the intellectual, skills that we need to ask. I think God will give us how to act like that. So, and for me, today, for example, there are people who came because they have space. They need to produce vegetables. What I do is to give them good seeds, produce that. And we need really to produce. And I'm going, after this conference, I'm going to the villages, even in Kikwit and over Kikwit, just to tell people that they need to nourish the relatives who are in Kinshasa, but we are not taking it without money. We pay them. And at the time, we encourage them to produce more, because I just experienced that these people, they produce, but they don't have people who can come and buy what they produce. Congo is different from Malawi. They love the Malawi I love. They don't have land in Malawi. When I visited with Makasa, what he's doing really in Kasungu, I saw that that's a small space of land. But here in Congo, we have plenty of. To tell you, for the CERED, we have 400 hectares of land. And sometimes people are lazy, but we need to encourage them to produce. When they gain some money, they become aware that they can do something. The sanitarian aspect. You know, the CERED has an objective to learn from what our ancestors have done. They have a wisdom to heal illness like malaria, but this kind of wisdom is not known. And it's why we are going in the village to say, in kind of virus like this, what they can do, how they can help. And it seems that they have really tools to help, but scientific world must come and try to see how they can help these people producing. So that's what I wanted to tell you, that we are in practical activities. People now are working. There are women who are working, planting cassava, cassava bread, and so on. We are doing this work and producing pork, but not producing 2 or 3, but to produce as a community. We can produce to eat ourselves and sell. Because when I go in a supermarket now in Kinshasa, you will see that they are empty. We will not have rice in 2 months. Many things in 2 months, I don't know. So we need really to take actions, and actions are not only words, are not only conferences, but we need really, if there is a help to make, that's the time. So conferences are very good because they are making us known. We can express what we are doing, it's okay, but we need more actions than word, than conferences, than thank you very much. It's what I will share with you what I said. I have a paper I wrote and I will send to Father Chilufya, who can share with others. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tshikendwa. He is a Jesuit who is the director for the Center for Research and Sustainable Development in Congo DRC. And thank you for the call for us to participate more and be proactive as Africans. And I'm sure most people agree with me that the COVID-19 pandemic has created an opportunity for Africa to try and learn to be self-reliant. I will now call upon the last person to speak. And fortunately, we won't have an opportunity for questions because of the time factor. But we know that there will be yet another opportunity for everyone to come together and have a more interactive discussion. I'm going to call upon Karen, who is going to introduce herself and tell us what young people are doing with their initiative to try and make a difference in the world with regards to the issues that we have been discussing. Karen, you may come in now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for the discussions, for the panelists that have been speaking. I'm here on behalf of the Lead Magistrate Power Panel on SDGs and Laudato Si. And as a young people, we are taking the commitment for the next 1 year to champion goals that Jenna and Jacob is working on, specifically on climate action. In our midst, we also have the inaugural cohort of the Lead Magistrate Power Panel on SDGs, who are the very people who are going to take the interventions and the examples that we've been given by the various speakers and implement them.
Karen, please raise your voice.
I'm sorry, is this better?
Please raise your voice.
Yes. So like I was saying, we have young people on this call who are part of the inaugural cohort of the Lead Magistrate Power Panel on SDGs and Laudato Si. These are the very young champions and young people who have taken the commitment to take the work and the examples, the great examples that have been presented here, and take them for implementation back in their communities on ground. So I'd love to introduce the Lead Magistrate Power Panel to us all here. We have, and allow me to also share my screen so we can be able to view their profiles. For the Lead Magistrate Power Panel board members, kindly just introduce yourself, the region you're representing, and what you hope to achieve at the end of your cohortship, that is in 1 year. Can you keep it under 60 seconds if possible? We will start with Given, here from Zambia. Given. Given, you can unmute yourself. As Given sorts himself out, I see Apollinaire. Apollinaire, you can go.
Yes, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, and I remember your song in Kigali. Please proceed.
Yes, it has been a quite interesting talk. So I'm Apollinaire from the DRC, Kinshasa. I actually work with Jesuit at the Centre Culturel Boboto. So what to actually do with the young people is we try to think and imagine how we can use culture and art to promote creativity for young people. Because we believe there will come a time when we have to think of things that has never existed. So this will be time when the thoughts won't be based on experience, maybe based on imagination and creativity. It is like the talks that we are having these days, like how life after COVID-19. Actually, no one of us has lived in a time after COVID-19. So people may think of experience that they experienced when they lived after war, after pandemic, but after COVID-19, no one has ever lived there in that time. So we try to bring imagination, creativity, and things that we can come out with. So work with artists, students, and many other cultural experts that we do many things. So this year I am committed to be one of the panelists, judges, and together with a team that I am actually coming out with. We come out with a plan where we support the Laudato Si, and actually we'll be working with Father Tshikendwa, who's expert in the environment sector, and we'll see what we can do together with CERED.
Apollinaire.
Yeah.
Please,
can you
please you only have half a minute to conclude.
Yeah, I am concluding.
Yes, if you could kindly.
What I was thinking and what we are going to do, and we work on supporting the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Karine, do we have another presenter before we release the participants? We've held them for quite a long time now. If we could please expedite the process. Please unmute.
In the interest of time, allow me then to just mention them by name as we look at the screen, and then I'll hand over to Father Charlie to conclude for us, if that's okay with you.
That's brilliant.
Okay, so I think you can just look at my screen. Am I still sharing?
Yes, you are.
Yes, so Theory Given is one of our members as well on the call. He is from Southern Africa. He's an economic graduate student from the University of Zambia. So he's the co-founder of a piggy bank student-run charity that has been quite successful. We also have Bajamo Taiwo from Nigeria, who will be a panelist member from West Africa. She is currently on call. She was not able to join us, but she sends her regards. We also have Lova from Madagascar, who will also be joining us, and he's very passionate about improving the well-being of health, especially in Africa, becoming a global health practitioner. We also have Kilo Joshua from Kenya, who will be a member from Eastern Africa. He's passionate about developing, wireless mass storage systems for young people to be able to use, and he understands that he's God's workmanship at this season. We have Apollinaire, who's spoken. We have Nerissa from Nigeria, who's also joined the session. They're a member from West Africa. She's also interested in bridging the gap between where we are now, where we need to be, especially when it comes to healthcare systems. And this is very important, seeing what the continent is currently going through. We have Laura Simbarashi from Zimbabwe, who's also here with us. He'll be a member from Southern Africa. He's also passionate about volunteering and community development. We have Castanio Lawrence from Zambia, who will also be a member representing the Southern Africa region. She's very interested in and passionate about working with young people who have challenges in learning. So we're looking forward to our contribution here as well. We have Gilbert, who is on the call from Togo, a member who will be a panelist member from Western Africa. She's also interested in communications and is currently completing her master's degree in business law. And then we have finally myself. I'll be representing Kenya from the Eastern Africa region as well. And I'm passionate about youth, what we can do to transform our continent. Thank you so much. This is the first time we're doing this cohort of youth, this Lead Magic Youth cohort from SDGs and Laudato Si, and it's a program directly from JENA. This is the Youth Wing program, and we're so grateful for the support that we've been receiving from JENA as young people. We see that you believe in us, and we will not let you down. Over to you, Father Charlie. Thank you so much, madam.
Okay, thank you very much, Karin. Without taking too long, just to give under a minute context to Lead Magis Youth Power Panel, to be a youth power panel that will be it's a youth power panel on SDGs and Laudato Si, which Laudato Si, for those who don't know Laudato Si, it's a letter that the Pope wrote to all humanity, encouraging us to take care of our common home and to change the way we live, both as corporate people as well as individuals. So now we are realizing that more than half of the population of Africa is young. They are below 30 or 35. In fact, if you go to below 35, it's 70%. So if we want to dream of a new Africa, the best people to engage are the young people who have the energy, they have the resources, and they have everything that they could put out there to make a difference in the world. So that's the philosophy behind this program. And Lead Magis is a term in the Jesuits which means more. Okay, so this is where the young people want to express themselves and want to do more or to become more to make a difference in the world, to become global citizens who champion change and want to make the world a better place. So I'd like to ask you to just think of them, bless them, and support them. And wherever you are, be with young people and support them to make a difference. So just now, the role that Karin gave me is to commission them, and by all the powers vested in me, I commissioned this group of young people, and I commissioned them to go out and make a difference in the world. God bless you richly and do well.
Thank you so much, Brother Charlie.
Thank you very much, Father Charlie, for that beautiful end of this very interesting discussion. I think we are all aware that we will not be able to make progress without involving young people. And they will be the implementers of all these policies that we have discussed. So on behalf of Jenna, I wish to thank Dr. Nyazi, Dr. Tshikendwa, SG, Father Makasa, SG, and every single person that has been able to log in and listening to this webinar. We hope that next time we'll have adequate time to have discussions. But I think it was important that we set the ball rolling by giving as much information as possible so that it gives you enough food for thought as we prepare for the next sessions that will probably be more interactive. And we wish to thank the United Nations Environmental Programme for coming on board and being part of this, hopefully, and I think prayerfully, life-changing movement that has commenced of sharing information and addressing issues that concern the environment, the health, and also the different aspects of problems that affect Africa. And also to be positive and optimistic that the solution lies within ourselves. And we have seen how, for example, Congo DRC are able to find certain solutions to health issues and asking for scientific support to make sure that they're authentic. So we do have solutions, and we have the Jesuits supporting this, and Jenna that is already working in Nairobi and helping the poor communities to keep pushing this agenda. So on that note, thank you very much. And I wish to close this by asking Father Adrian to give us a short closing prayer, and then we can all log off. Thank you very much. Father Adrian, over to you, please. Father Adrian.
Oh.
It's a short closing prayer for us before we log off. Thank you.
All right. Let us pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. We thank you, dear Lord, for the time that we had here to share knowledge, share our experiences. We pray that you may continue to bless this community in different places, united for a common purpose, to create a better world to live in. We pray that you may bless all our efforts, all our interventions that are geared towards creating a more just and friendly world. We pray, dear Lord, that as we come to the end of this meeting, you may bless us and grant us all the graces and the energy that we need to continue to do your work. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, the world without end. Amen. Amen.
Thank you very much, Father Adrian. And I wish now to invite all those that have any queries, any further interventions, to email to Jenna. I'm sure you have received communication from them before, so you'll be able to submit everything to Father Charlie, who's going to put everything together for the next session. Thank you very much. God bless you and go well. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Nice to see you, young people. Bye.
Thank you, Ngabo. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So you can